What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com. Here are my DFS picks for NBA Wednesday, February 24th. These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our new videos. In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for today's NBA slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made.
Okay guys, we got a 9-game slate tonight, so let's take a look at the point guard position. I like DeJounte Murray from the San Antonio Spurs playing the Oklahoma City Thunder, who have the 3rd worst defense overall, and they give up the 10th most fantasy points to opposing point guards. DeJounte Murray has averaged 34.6 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 30 minutes per game with a 23% usage rate. He scored 55, 34, and 13 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 32, 24, and 26 minutes. He's projected at 43 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.7 times value. He's $7,500 FanDuel salary and 100 less on DraftKings. Vegas thinks there's going to be 218 points scored in this game. So I like DeJounte Murray here versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. Okay, another point guard that I like is Kendrick Nunn from the Miami Heat playing the Toronto Raptors, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they're middle-of-the-pack defending opposing point guards. Kendrick Nunn has averaged 25.2 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 30 minutes per game with a 22% usage rate. But he scored 55, 46, and 25 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 41, 39, and 31 minutes. He's projected at 27.7 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5 times value. He's $5,600 FanDuel salary and 500 more on DraftKings. So I love that FanDuel price. Vegas thinks there's going to be 215.5 points scored in this game. And Kendrick Nunn scored 40 and 43 fantasy points in his last 2 games versus the Toronto Raptors. So he's playing a ton of minutes. So I like Kendrick Nunn here versus the Toronto Raptors. Now this player just caught my eye, Sebin Lee from the Detroit Pistons playing the New Orleans Pelicans, who have the 5th worst defense overall, and they give up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing point guards. Sebin Lee has scored 34 and 32 fantasy points in the last 2 games, playing 28 and 32 minutes. He's projected at 28 fantasy points here tonight, and on FanDuel that's 5.6 times value. So he's $5,000 FanDuel salary, but he's $1,200 less on DraftKings. I'm just going to take a look, and yeah, it looks like that Delon Wright is out. He's going to miss a couple of weeks, so it looks like Sebin Lee is getting some extra minutes here and is performing pretty well, and his salary is still super low on DraftKings, so he makes a really nice DraftKings value play. Vegas thinks there's going to be 223 points scored in this game. Great matchup here. So I like Sebin Lee here versus the New Orleans Pelicans. Okay, let's take a look at the shooting guard position. I like Jeremy Lamb from the Indiana Pacers playing the Golden State Warriors, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they give up the 12th most fantasy points to opposing shooting guards. Jeremy Lamb has averaged 23.3 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 25 minutes per game with an 18% usage rate. He scored 29, 22, and 12 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 28, 25, and 19 minutes. He's projected at 26 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.2 times value. He's $5,000 FanDuel salary and the same price on DraftKings. Now, Jeremy Lamb has scored 33, 32, 47, and 29 fantasy points in his last 4 games versus the Golden State Warriors. That is exceptional player versus team history. So I really like this play here tonight. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 228.5 points scored in this game. So I like Jeremy Lamb here versus the Golden State Warriors.
Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching. If you want to enter the drawing for $100 PayPal, all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won, and then we'll send you $100 PayPal. So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
Another shooting guard that I like is Donovan Mitchell from the Utah Jazz playing the LA Lakers, who have a good defense overall, and they give up the 9th most fantasy points to opposing shooting guards. Donovan Mitchell has averaged 38.5 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 34 minutes per game with a 32% usage rate. He scored 37, 55, and 55 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 33, 34, and 33 minutes. He's projected at 42 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.1 times value. He's 8,300 FanDuel salary and 400 more on DraftKings. So I also like this pick because Donovan Mitchell has scored 41, 39, and 46 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Lakers. Mike Conley is out, so Donovan Mitchell is getting an increased usage rate. So I like Donovan Mitchell here versus the LA Lakers. Okay, let's take a look at the small forward position. I like LeBron James from the LA Lakers playing the Utah Jazz, who have a good defense overall. They've been good versus opposing small forwards, but LeBron James has averaged 48.4 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 35 minutes per game with a 32% usage rate. He scored 56, 44, and 49 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 43, 37, and 32 minutes. He's projected at 49.3 fantasy points here tonight. That's 4.7 times value. He's 10,400 FanDuel salary and 500 more on DraftKings. So he's priced up. So he's going to need about 55 fantasy points for you to get 5 times value or more. But one of the reasons that I like this pick is because LeBron James has scored 50, 45, and 57 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Utah Jazz. Vegas thinks there's going to be 219.5 points scored in this game. So I like LeBron James here versus the Utah Jazz. Now, if you're looking for a decent mid-range play here, take a look at Garrett Temple from the Chicago Bulls playing the Minnesota Timberwolves, who have the 2nd worst defense overall, and they give up the 6th most fantasy points to opposing small forwards. Garrett Temple has averaged 19.8 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 28 minutes per game with a 14% usage rate. He scored 20, 28, and 28 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 28, 29, and 33 minutes. He's projected at 21.6 fantasy points here tonight. That's 4.7 times value. He's 4,600 FanDuel salary and 200 more on DraftKings. So I like that he's averaging about 30 minutes per game in the last 3 games. He's got a couple of 28s in there. So you want him to get at least 25 fantasy points or more to get you over 5 times value. But Vegas thinks there's going to be 227.5 points scored in that game. So this is a great matchup. And he scored 24, 9, 28, and 9 fantasy points in his last 4 games versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. So you can see this is kind of a hit or miss play here. High risk, high reward play. So I like Garrett Temple here versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. Okay, let's take a look at the power forward position. I like Trey Lyles from the San Antonio Spurs playing the Oklahoma City Thunder, who have the third worst defense overall, and they give up the second most fantasy points to opposing power forwards. Now, Trey Lyles, he's in a good spot here because LaMarcus Aldridge and Keldon Johnson are out, so he should get plenty of minutes here this game. He's projected at 25 fantasy points here tonight. That's 6.3 times value on FanDuel, and he's 4,000 FanDuel salary, and he's 800 less on DraftKings. So I love this DraftKings value play. Vegas thinks there's going to be 218 points scored in this game. It's a great matchup. He should get plenty of playing time here tonight. Think that salary's way too low for the minutes that he's going to play. So I like Trey Lyles here versus the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports. You can try the Position Optimizer, where you can see the top players ranked for each position. And we added a new Player Trends tool, where you can see the top salary differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. It's a really good tool to help you pick out value for the site that you're playing on. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
The other power forward that I like is Jason Tatum from the Boston Celtics playing the Atlanta Hawks, who have the 13th worst defense overall, and they give up the 6th most fantasy points to opposing power forwards. Jason Tatum has averaged 44.4 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 36 minutes per game with a 31% usage rate. He scored 46, 51, and 50 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 35, 41, and 37 minutes. He's projected at 44.9 fantasy points here tonight. That's 4.8 times value. He's 9,400 FanDuel salary and 200 less on DraftKings. So I like this pick here because Jason Tatum has scored 50, 54, and 47 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Hawks. Vegas thinks there's going to be 227.5 points scored in this game. It's a good matchup. Nice player versus team history here. So I like Jason Tatum here versus the Atlanta Hawks. Okay, moving on to the center position. I like Clint Capella from the Atlanta Hawks playing the Boston Celtics, who have a good defense overall, and they give up the 13th most fantasy points to opposing centers. Clint Capella has averaged 40.4 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 30 minutes per game with a 20% usage rate. He scored 39, 37, and 60 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 36, 31, and 31 minutes. He's projected at 43.3 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.3 times value. He's 8,200 FanDuel salary and 400 less on DraftKings. So I like this pick because he scored 60 and 42 fantasy points in his last 2 games versus the Celtics. I really like this DraftKings price at only 7,800 DFS salary or DraftKings salary. So I like Clint Capella here versus the Boston Celtics. Another center that I like is Wendell Carter Jr. from the Chicago Bulls playing the Minnesota Timberwolves, who have the 2nd worst defense overall, and they give up the absolute most fantasy points to opposing centers. Wendell Carter Jr. has averaged 28.2 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 27 minutes per game with a 20% usage rate. He scored 47, 25, and 20 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 28, 33, and 24 minutes. He's projected at 28.1 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.2 times value. He's 5,400 FanDuel salary and 400 more on DraftKings. So we know Vegas thinks there's going to be 227.5 points scored in this game. fantastic matchup here. So I like Wendell Carter Jr. here versus the Minnesota Timberwolves.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smickety smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.